Hey, HTDA, and today I want to help you out a little bit with the new upgrade in Dyson Sphere Program that just dropped this week that is all about interstellar logistics. So just to be clear, the update mainly pertains to the logistics that are interstellar, so the interstellar logistics station, and then specifically the vessels that travel between your planets. So the drones that travel across your planet that are also included in the planetary logistics station, and as well the bots that are flying around between your logistic distributors are not necessarily affected by this update, at least not as far as I can tell from the developer's log. Although, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these optimization features also found their way to the behavior of these units. But specifically what we're going to be talking about is this new priority settings tab that we now have available in the ILS. So let me start you off with a little bit of background. If you play this game in the end game, then you're probably going to be building hundreds of these ILSs in order to transport your goods between the planets. And that means that there is typically dozens of destinations that a given ship could theoretically go to in order to either supply or deliver its resources to. Now, that means that there was a huge amount of computations going on in the background of your game in order for these ships to determine what they should be bringing where, and it also could lead to some very weird behavior where you could have ships flying from one side of your universe to the other side of your universe just because it was going to supply some type of resource that was actually in demand there. So, long story short, that's not really efficient, and you can actually play around it a little bit by setting up your facilities very centrally, like I've actually done over here. So you can see I have pretty much all my ships going to my central station, basically to avoid some of those inefficiencies. But you can still see there's a couple of ships flying in random directions here and there. That is basically behavior that you would normally not want to see. So how do we solve that? Well, I present to you the priority settings tab in your ILS. So this is the second tab in below, just behind basically your normal station settings that haven't really changed. Now, what can you do here? You can actually set 3 different levels of priority in terms of what you want to be delivered where in which order. So let's just go through it first in the basics, and then I'll actually show you how it works. First of all, you have a point-to-point delivery system. This is exactly what it says on the tin. So basically you say, okay, this station, which you do actually have to give a name, is going to deliver its resources to a specific other station that also has a name. So this is actually pairing up, literally pairing up stations to say this station delivers its stuff there. That takes priority over everything else. Then the second level you can have is the interstellar route, which is basically saying, okay, on this planet I'm producing, let's say, oil, and that oil is going to be delivered to this system that is going to take that oil, and thereby basically avoiding any other system that might also be requesting oil, but that system is going to supply its oil to that specific other system. By doing it like that, you basically create an interstellar highway type of thing, where if there's no point-to-point delivery set, then the next thing it will try is to deliver its oil to that specific place. Then, third of all, you can assign your stations in a group. And basically what it will try to do is any stations that are linked up in the same group will try to deliver to each other. And you can have stations set up in multiple groups. So it's not like you only limit it to one certain destination. No, you can combine different groups. And then finally, you have the behavior setting here in the back that can basically tell you which behaviors to prioritize over which, but I'll get to that in a moment. But before I do that, I do want to say thank you to Lucien Frechette and Eric Vevinger, who recently became members of the channel. So thank you very much for your support. I hope I didn't butcher your names too much, but I'm glad you're here. Okay, so let's start out with the most basic setup for delivery, and that is the point-to-point system, which is also the highest priority system once again. So if you set this up, this will take priority over everything else. First of all, what you need to do, as it says here, is name the stations that you want to be delivering from and to. Now, I already went to another planet, and again, it doesn't need to be on another planet. I gave a station a name there, so we still need to give this one a name too, so we know what we're connecting. So let's call this the Graphite Station 001, just because I'm super original like that. Okay, so that doesn't actually do anything, but now this thing has a name, so we have an easy way to identify it. Now we can press configure, we can press this plus button over here, and then we can go and find our other station. Now you do actually need to type, and it will find the name, and I called this a very important place, but you should give it a name that's very easy to identify, or at the very least, it's very easy to tell what is actually being produced there or what you want to have delivered there. But for example, let's say you have a central planet where you have all your science going, for example, or your science production going, then give that planet or those stations a specific name that basically tells you what that planet is, so you can easily find them again once you're somewhere else. Once you do, just click on the name, the station will be selected, and you can add it like that. Now you can actually see what types of items that particular ILS that is on the other planet is actually going to be supplying. So you can see that there's actually 4 items being supplied in that ILS, and it happens to be include graphite, so that's exactly what we want. So if we set it up like this means that all the graphite between these 2 stations will be traveling to each other unless there is no demand for that particular item at that point in time. Okay, so next on the list is my favorite setting, I believe, and that is the Interstellar route. It's very easy to set up. So let's say I have some production on this planet, and I want to have that delivered to that planet, and we're talking about a specific resource or maybe even multiple resources. What I can do, I am now currently on this planet. I can say, okay, let's just transport our stuff to that other planet, and specifically, let's say I'm going to be transporting graphite. What I've done now is I've set up an interstellar route, which is going to make sure that any graphite that is going to be demanded or supplied on either of these 2 planets is going to try to be delivered to the other planet. So that means that basically if I'm producing graphite on this planet, it is very unlikely that that is actually going to be delivered anywhere else than this planet. That can only happen if there's no actual demand on this planet once we have some available. Now, you don't have to limit this to one particular resource. You can just add other types of resources as well. As you can see, you can add quite a few, pretty much as many as you want. However, it is worth noting that, let's switch back to graphite here for a moment. It is worth noting that you can actually also see how many ILSs are actually connected to this specific route. So for example, in the case of graphite, you can see I have 14 ILSs actually either supplying or demanding this particular resource. Now what I can do is if I pick something else and I remove graphite for a moment. So I have no demand or supply for this particular resource in either of those 2 planets. So setting up a route for that is not going to do much. So, or in this case, it's not actually going to do anything at all. So it's a very easy way to make sure you're actually selecting the right planets and right systems in order to transport your items in between. You can actually also tell if you have an ILS selected if it is part of a interstellar route. Because I selected graphite for my interstellar route between these 2 planets, it is now actually showing as a route of 1. If I change this to, again, let's say something I don't actually have access to, and I check back on my planet in my ILS, you can now see that it has 0 routes available. So this is not part of that particular interstellar route. Now, of course, you can set up multiple different routes for different types of resources, or even the same resource if you want, between this planet and every other single planet in the system if you want to, and not just in the system, in your entire galaxy. So for example, as you can see here, I now said, okay, let's make sure the graphite is going to this planet, but all the iron ore is going to go to a different planet altogether. And again, you can combine as many resources if you want. You can also see that the number of stations actually goes up if you supply more resources, because, well, more ILSs are going to be involved in that route. It's a very easy way to make sure things are going where they need to go. Then last but not least, we have the group settings. And this is kind of the lazy man's way to do pretty much the same as an Interstellar route. But you do need to do some additional bookkeeping on your own end. But it's extremely easy to set things up. So all you need to do is select an ILS and say, okay, you are part of these specific groups. And then it will try to deliver its resources to other ILSs within that same group. So as long as you remember what is going to be assigned to which thing, so let's say you know that your iron ore production is always going to be on 1, and then the closest iron ore processing facility is always 2, or whatever. You can set that up in such a way that you always know, okay, this is going from there to there, and arrange it like that. Now, honestly, if you're going to do something like that, I think it's probably better to do it with interstellar routes. At least I think that makes more sense to me. But again, this requires very little work. So as long as you know what numbers are going to be reflecting what, you could even just do it like certain systems have a particular number, and you know, like, okay, my main system is this system, so as long as everything is going from there to there, that should work. You could do something similar like that as well, and you don't have to manually name your stations, you don't have to pick planets, you don't have to set up routes, anything like that. Just set up the groups and you're done. Okay, and that brings us to the behavior setting. So by default, it will be set to priority pairing, which means that by default, the ILS will always try to pick up its resource or deliver its resources to any station that it is paired with. If that is not assigned to anything, or there's no demand or supply in that pairing, then it will look at interstellar routes and try to do the same thing there. Then it will look at groups, and then lacking anything else, it will look pretty much anywhere else in the universe. But that means that you can very easily guide your vessels to make sure they're always going for the same place first. You can set it to ignore pairing, and then it does exactly that. It will ignore the pairing, so it will skip to that and then use the other priorities as an example first. You can also set this, and this is very interesting, to exclusive pairing. This means that it will only deliver or request its resources from specific stations that it is paired with. So it will never send vessels to other stations that are not part of the pairing. So if you want to make sure that some sort of production is being delivered to only a particular planet, so for example, in my earlier example, what I was talking about, the iron ore being produced on one planet, if you know that, like, right next door there is an iron processing facility, but you do have several of those across your universe, then it makes sense to make sure that your iron ore is always going to be delivered to that specific, very close by processing facility, and not to any of the other ones. So setting this up with exclusive pairing in that case might make sense, so you know exactly where your iron ore is going to be delivered. Now, that is kind of a fringe situation, because I think still that it is way easier to set up an interstellar route to do something similar to that. But there might be situations where you just want to guarantee, okay, this can only go there, and then this is where you would use exclusive pairing. Other than that, generally speaking, I think that you'll find yourself using the priority pairing. Again, that's the default. You will use that the most. And actually let me know in the comment which of these settings are you expecting to use the most yourself. Speaking for myself, again, I think I'll mostly stick to interstellar routes. The point-to-point is a lot of work. It is very direct and precise, so it has that going for it, but interstellar routes just a lot simpler to set up. And the way I play, I usually know that stuff needs to go in a certain direction, and that's enough. And I could do the same with the group settings. I just don't like that you can't exactly see what you're setting up with which, and you might confuse numbers or whatever. So this would basically mean keeping a spreadsheet so you know what group is actually doing what. I don't know, but let me know your thoughts on this as well. Either way, everyone, I hope this helped you get your logistics in order a little bit better than how it used to work. You have more control now. You don't need to use it. It will work mostly fine if you don't use these settings at all. But if you do want to make sure things are actually going where they should be going in an efficient way, then by all means, these tools will exactly let you do that. So I hope you found this useful. If you're still here, you're awesome, and I do hope to catch you in the next one.